All right, I see people starting to join. I'll just give everyone a minute before the greeting. Love it. All of the names I see from all over the world popping up. Very cool. All right, we'll get started. We do have quite a bit of a packed agenda for today. Hi, everyone. I'm Iryna Liashchuk. I'm the president at Blynk, the low-code IoT software platform, for those of you who are not familiar with us. And today we're here to talk about IoT in HVAC, and not the kind that you kind of maybe have been reading about in generic blog posts or polished decks. Our goal today is to get real and talk about what really happens when you try to connect thousands or hundreds of thousands of devices in the field, and when you try to create a cutting-edge digital experience for the equipment that's supposed to last 15 to 20 years. And today I'm joined by three wonderful guests. Let me introduce our speakers today. So we've got Peachie Maher. Peachie is the Senior Product Manager at Rheem Commercial Water, where she's been leading connected product development in commercial water heating. Thank you, Peachie, for being here. Peachie's been, and Rayback and Rheem have been a longtime customer of Blynk. So delighted to have you as part of this session. We also have Mark Adams. Mark is the product manager at Mitsubishi Electric Trane. Quite recently, he was at Rinnai, also leading IoT product efforts there. That's kind of where we got to know Mark. And so Mark brings the perspective from both kind of the household appliance equipment in HVAC and now more like large scale commercial ecosystem for control. So thank you, Mark. Delighted to have you here as well. And last but not least, we have Joe Lang. Joe is the Vice President of Service, Technology, and Innovation at Comfort Systems USA. For those of you folks who might not be familiar with Comfort Systems, it's one of the leading HVAC contractors in the US. So while the first two speakers are kind of representing more of the OEM side of things, Joe is here to talk about from the perspective of people who install the equipment, to service the equipment, and kind of hopefully this will give for a really well-rounded discussion today. Thank you guys for making time in your busy days to be here. We appreciate it. All right, so obviously lots of talk about connected HVAC, right? And often it stays on a bit more on the surface. Not a lot of companies are willing to share more of the real experiences, especially the more challenging ones where, you know, the bets have not lived up to the expectations, et cetera, and kind of where things have been learned the hard way. So today we want to cover some of the things that really worked, some of the things that hasn't worked. We want to talk about all of the learnings across, you know, the folks who are here to share from business cases, technology decisions, to service workflows and product strategies. Because we all know that delivering kind of a connected product is not just a tech challenge, it's something that you have to make work across economics, reliability, it's about making things work in real work conditions. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And folks who are listening in, we've got a nice audience. I love it. Please submit your questions. You can submit your questions in Q&A or in the chat. We're going to leave some time at the end to cover some of them, and I'm sure there will be others that will follow up in the follow-up communications. So with that, I'm sure you're more excited to hear from our speakers, so let's dive in. I wanted to start with kind of the beginning, so the why. So Mark, Peachie, Joe, when your teams have first made the case for IoT development, what was that pitch about? Was it more about the cost savings? Was it more about the new revenue, the improved customer experience? Why did you kind of embark on that journey? And I think I want to start with Peachie for this one. We've worked together the longest. I think we started in 2018, so things have probably evolved. But what was the original why for you guys?
So there were a few original whys, and yes, it has been an evolution, you know, starting in 2018 to what it is now. It has certainly changed in the market. At the time that we started our projects, there obviously is always an interest in revenue generation. That's going to be a default assumption for any business that's going into this. But it also has to do with the customer experience. There's also the efficiency within that organization as well, right? Us having visibility to the products. There was a potential for data data gathering, as well as being able to help our customers more efficiently and learn from those installations in the field. So really, I would say that when we started, what we saw as the real case for it was really from an operational perspective. Because we had products that had a very robust control system. We're monitoring 144 different points on our products, but that wasn't as visible when you're standing in front of the product. And so having the IoT solution really gave us the ability to put all of those points of data in one place, focus on the ones that were most important, and then look at the trending data. And that really gave us a much more holistic view of the operation of the product. So we were able to do faster troubleshooting and recommendations. And then you could look at the monetary value of it afterwards, because then you could prove the value of the product from the customer experience standpoint.
Got it. And how quickly, if you recall, were you guys able to get from, think this is the value that we think we're going to deliver, to being able to show it or see it in action?
In terms of being able to see it, it was fairly quick. I mean, once we were able to implement it, even within test units within our lab, we could see the real world results there, because we were things that you would have had to physically troubleshoot by opening the unit, turning it on and off, things like that. You could see in real time because you're collecting the data. And while that was being collected in the control system simply didn't have the way to showcase all of the data at the same time. So it was pretty easy to see what we thought the value was, and then we were able to implement that in test sites at customer sites. So we picked sites that were problematic and put these units on there, and we were able to troubleshoot and make recommendations much faster. So it was pretty quick to be able to see the value of it.
Got it. Thank you, Peachie. Mark, what was your why, I guess, at Rinnai, or maybe even before that? You're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry. So, very good question. So when I went to Rinnai, Rinnai had a customer-facing, residential-facing IoT system for a while, and that's because people like to control their water heaters and be able to monitor from afar. So it's become table stakes in a lot of the water heating as well as the HVAC industry, that you're just the expectation of the customer is that you're able to see that data. The issue Rinnai had was that we had a app that really was not pleasing anyone. We had hardware that wouldn't connect for a majority of people. We had a cloud service that was slow and often inaccurate. And so one of the projects that I had at the very beginning was, okay, let's get this cleaned up and figure this out. So that was the big push at Rinnai, was we have a very quality product, a manufactured water heater, but our IoT experience is bringing that value down, or the appearance of that value down. It makes us look like we're a company that really doesn't deliver quality. And so we took a look at how to redo our hardware solution, redo our software solution to get that back up and running. And then at the job I'm at now, Mitsubishi Electric, I'm actually focused more on the commercial side, but there the demands for data are even bigger. The biggest thing with IoT is making sure that the alerts go to the contractor and that the contractor can diagnose and figure out issues from afar before rolling that truck. And so that's where the big value is. There's other values of control and such, but if you can reduce one truck roll every 6 months, one truck roll a year, the IoT solution more than pays for itself. So the big goal with IoT is, how do we make sure that we're connected? How do we make sure that we're accurately and adequately connected, and that the installers who did not go into plumbing or HVAC installation because they want to do networking, can install it with minimal issues.
Makes a lot of sense. And now that you brought up the contractor kind of experience and value add, let's switch over to Joe. Why IoT for you guys? I guess I know the answer now, and it's going to probably touch on what Mark was saying.
Yeah, so there's a certain part of it that is customer experience, but it's also technician experience. And kind of playing on what both Peachie and Mark said, one of the aspects is anytime we can fix a unit faster, we create more scale for us as a company to grow without growing our technician base. And the other part is it helps us with our skills trades gap. The HVAC industry is just about into a crisis as far as bodies to go out and service this equipment. And I think that's probably one of the things that might hinder some growth over the next couple of years. We've got some unique ways to go about it, but one of them is the IoT so that we don't have to go to the job site. And by the way, we're agnostic to equipment. We don't manufacture any of it. We work on everybody else's equipment. And so instead of going to the job site, troubleshoot, leave, go get the parts and come back the next day, it's go know what the primary issue is and resolve it in one day, one trip, improve first time fix. But again, that scales our technician so that we can take on more customers without scaling technicians at the same rate. So that's our drive for us.
Okay, got it. And this blends into the next question I had for you guys about the economics. Obviously, you've touched on it already a little bit, but there was a lot of talk about connected HVAC changing the whole business models, going from one-time equipment sales to these recurring revenue models. From your perspective, is that already happening? Is that real, or is it still a bit more of an aspiration or a vision? And if it's not really there yet for your companies, so where is that main ROI? If you could articulate that, I know you've touched on it a little bit, but where is the ROI essentially? Are you seeing it already? Is it clear, or is there a challenge with proving ROI when it comes to IoT investment? Whoever wants to go first here, I think.
Okay, I'll swing at it first. I think one of our driving factors is we predominantly, on about 78% of our equipment, have a maintenance agreement in place. But the challenge with that is it is essentially the same maintenance agreement I sold 40 years ago when I got into the industry. And so there's a couple of things. I think customer expectations are changing, although they don't know exactly what it is they want that's different. But I know in order for us to separate ourselves from our competitors, that gives us the ability to do that. And in doing that, it gives us the opportunity to have different pricing structures. So we provide a different value for the customer, uptime as a service, and therefore we're not in that 40 people bidding on the same task-based, date-based agreement that falls mostly into the HVAC industry, whether it's commercial or industrial or even residential. So for us, it's kind of changing the overall model, which will prove, I think it's already starting to prove that customers want something different, and that different of an experience is valuable to them, and so they pay for it.
Good.
So, I mean, I would add on to that really that Mark alluded to this earlier, which is that having connected product has really become a standard expectation in our markets. So while in 2018, we might have thought of a pay-for-use model or maybe a tiered model, now it's just becoming an expected cost of the product. So the interesting thing about that, though, is that there are a good portion of your customers that aren't necessarily going to connect to an IoT solution. And that may be because in a commercial setting, they're going to have a building management system or something that's already going to take care of the solution for them. So in terms of revenue generation, I think what's been important for us is identifying what customer bases would be more willing to connect and what the reasons for that is. The other hard part when you're in HVAC is most people don't look at this equipment very often. And when they are interacting with it, it's during a pain point. So really it's become an art of selling it at the point where somebody is in a situation with either no heating or no hot water. And so you can prove the value of the solution to them by how fast you can react to that. And so for us, it has made sense to then partner with somebody like Joe's organization, where you have that service component of it as well, because that's the critical component of it. Is not only do I need to help you identify what the problem is and what the possible solution is, but you need to be able to activate that service fairly quickly to reduce that downtime. So that's really where the revenue generation has moved, is not so much from us as a manufacturer. The expectation is we're going to provide it, but it's partnering with service contractors who can then utilize it at the right customer base, and also changing that marketing message to change what is a crisis mode into something that gives you a solution really quickly.
That's interesting. Mark, does that resonate? Does that kind of align with what you've seen? And especially, like, is there a big difference in the ROI, the views for commercial, large scale systems and residential ones?
So Peachie made some good points with that. The biggest thing is on commercial, you do have a willingness to spend a bit more money, particularly on your connected solution. Because if you're connected, Cindy, I think you need to mute. Okay. Because in the case of commercial, if your hot water goes down in your restaurant, you don't just have inconvenience, you lose your business. You have to shut down. So in the commercial space, you do have the opportunity, both in water heating as well as HVAC, to have the primary owner have a subscription. On the residential, that really is unheard of. So your any model needs to go through what benefit do you provide the contractor, and the contractor probably does have an annual agreement with their end users, and so making an opportunity where you bring value to that contractor to enable him to do that maintenance agreement is where you have the opportunity to make some to have a recurring income.
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of spelled that out very directly, because we do work with a lot of smaller HVAC OEMs, with someone who's building, and they come to us for consulting as well. And they're like, should we charge? Is it common? And increasingly the answer is, in residential, don't rely on that. It's no longer a thing. And it's always been hard to push subscriptions on consumers, but it's even harder now when everyone else has offered this kind of as a part of the value prop, just as you said, table stakes. So it's interesting that you are kind of confirming what we've also been seeing. Got it. Let's switch a little bit from economics to regulations. There's quite a bit of regulation in HVAC. There's all of these efficiency standards. There's refrigerant phase outs. There's you name it, especially in commercial water heating. How, and maybe this question is going to be a little more to Peachie and Mark. How have these regulations have they influenced your roadmap significantly? Have you guys had to turn things around? Have they just been blending into what you've already been building? Have regulations been kind of stopping innovation or catalyzing innovation? How do you look at that as a product manager in your companies? Peachie, maybe let's start with you.
Oh, sure, yeah. So I wouldn't necessarily say that the regulation standards are changing our roadmap in terms of connected product, with the exception of some of the regulations that are very targeted at having connected product. But for efficiency regulations to this point, I wouldn't say that the connected products are being used to drive efficiency or prove it or anything. However, I do see a future where that could be utilized. I'm not sure if it will be on the regulatory front. That's quite advanced for a regulatory group to actually put that into the standards, that there is a necessity to prove that you're operating at certain efficiencies. But I certainly can see this type of technology being utilized in order to communicate actual operating conditions, because in most cases, when you have a high efficiency product, it could be operating at a lower efficiency standpoint, and that's not where you would want it to be operating. So I can see that being utilized in the future and it probably would be more at a regional level, that would be more around rebating or power tiers, something like that would have a financial incentive for the customer. But in theory, it certainly could be used for regulation in order to prove operational efficiencies that it's meeting the criteria. So it could theoretically, but at this point, it's not necessarily driving our roadmaps.
Got it. You, Mark?
So on our side, there's several regulations that have made connectivity required. One recently is that Europe is going to start requiring companies of a certain size or buildings of a certain size to have a building management system of some type. And so connectivity right there is going to be required by law, which will drive the implementation of it. But you also need to make sure that you have what the regulations require on that. Additionally, over in the particularly on the West Coast, you have a requirement that units be able to support ADR. So being able to have the utility companies be able to dial back or change your schedule on equipment based on demand on the grid is becoming a requirement. Now, it's not a requirement to necessarily give them that ability, but if you want to sell equipment in that area, you have to support it. And so that has impacted our roadmap. Additionally, IoT and privacy laws are a patchwork among many different countries and even states. And so if you want to have a solution that bridges countries, particularly, you need to be aware of which ones have the most restrictive privacy laws, where does the data have to reside, and there's a lot to do in there regulation-wise. So regulation both impacts, but also gives opportunities as these new laws take effect and require a connectivity solution. It means that now you have a built-in customer who can't say no.
Becomes more of a necessity. It makes total sense. And Joe, is this mostly sitting with OEMs? Are you guys how does this affect your business, if at all?
Yeah, this mostly sits with the OEMs as far as those requirements. Where we get into some of the regulations is more around application and critical operations that we may have to provide additional information. Probably the one that we are most guided on here in the United States is certainly refrigerant. And so having records and analysis and data around that is certainly a big part. But for overall, most of the things that impact the equipment is handled by the OEMs.
Okay, thought so. Got it. All right. My probably favorite topic. Once we've talked the pain points, economics, let's talk about engineering, the less glamorous side, and kind of what we really help with. To some of the folks who are joining here, I know they wanted to hear about the technical decisions, the challenges. Each of you guys have gone through, from pilots to production to scale up. You've made build versus buy decisions. You've had, had to redesign systems. Can you share some of that journey? Maybe something that has gone not as expected, was a little more difficult, and how the different parts of the solution, such as cloud, front end, firmware, how did they all interact? How did you navigate all of these engineering and technological complexities? For this one, why don't we start with Peachie?
Well, full transparency, I wasn't the engineer on the project, so I didn't have to deal with all the hardware and software and firmware. But as I recall, still managing the project, that wasn't as much of a hurdle for us. It was pretty simple, with the exception of making some security decisions and things like that are just normal corporate business. What I would say was installation was the thing that caused us the most issue. And that really had to do with what it really necessitated was more training and understanding from our customer base, right? So at the point of installation, the focus for this equipment is really around the equipment, and there isn't necessarily a big focus on having the connected product connected. And so it becomes really a nice to have at installation, because it isn't one of the checkpoints. They need to get hot water, hot air, or cooling. So any barrier to the connection process is absolutely going to stop it. Our installers are plumbers or contractors for large buildings or boiler experts. So they don't have an IT background. And once they have to call IT, it's game over. They're not interested in doing that. They don't have the expertise and they've got other jobs to get to, frankly. So it really made for us making sure that training and quick support was critical, as well as understanding that in many cases there was going to have to be follow-up to get that product connected. And some of that stuff is hard to train for or prepare for. As I mean, even any of us who've tried to connect very simple IoT things within our house, there always seems to be something that comes up that you didn't expect. And so, that was really something that we weren't necessarily prepared for in the initial stages and had to learn very quickly, was how to address all of those things and then how to do follow-up when we weren't able to get connected at the first part of installation.
I always say no one's prepared for that because again, we've been doing this for 10 years and we're still perfecting the provisioning, the first time experience, and we can't stress enough in every single conversation. It's like, if you don't get this right, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter how scalable your infrastructure is, devices are not going to be connected. So that user experience, that guidance and everything is like critical and much more critical than folks typically realize. Yeah, and I loved when we spoke earlier, you said, yeah, technology was not that hard. I was like, okay, great. Sounds like you had great engineers and great partners. We'll take a little bit of credit for that as well. Great to hear. Awesome. Mark, how about you? Share a little bit of your pain points and learnings.
Sure. So again, like you mentioned earlier, two different experiences. The first at Rinnai, we realized that we needed a new solution, and we looked at a lot of different software contracting firms, and we ended up getting a wide variety of estimates. We needed to redo our hardware as well as our mobile app. Hardware, we had a trusted partner that we were able to go with who had experience, and so we de-risked everything on that side by going with the company that already knew the setup. But with our mobile app, we put out an RFQ to several different software boutique companies, and we got a wide variety of different costs, all the way from $50,000 to $2 million. And it's tough in that environment to figure out, okay, who's the best one, who's going to be the most reliable. It's tough to figure out based on just those price points and all. And it turned out that our first choice of them made a good UI that we liked originally, but then did not really deliver the stability of the system. And we actually had to change over. We had some bad reviews, had some downtime unexpected because of that. So in that case, we contracted it out, but it was to a firm that was going to do it from the ground up. And then at Mitsubishi Electric, we actually have the development in-house. The positive with in-house is that when I need to go see an engineer, I just go see the engineer. But the disadvantages are that because we are a manufacturing firm, not necessarily an IoT firm, we don't necessarily always have the people who have done the newest and the best. And so we tend to lag a little behind on technology as opposed to a company that would be fully committed to an IoT solution and figuring out with a history and with bringing their people up to speed. So the disadvantage with having it in-house is that you kind of buy all your issues. You own everything, which means that anything goes wrong, if you don't have the right person already on staff, you're kind of stuck as to where to go with that. So there's definite advantages to a pre-made solution like Blynk, both times that I'm answering this partly because I see in a question about this.
Yeah, I was going to allude to that. Who of you has Blynk? We did not participate in that initial RFI that Mark was talking about.
That is correct. That it was approximately 2 years before I met Blynk. So, but yeah, there's IoT. There's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of opportunity to get it wrong, which means that you either have to be always looking for the right people to bring into the organization, and then you have to figure out how to manage that when that might not be the focus of your organization, or you need to find a trusted partner. And finding a trusted partner is a very difficult thing in this market.
For sure. Anything, Mark, you would have done decidedly different next time around if you were to redo, like, let's say Rinnai experience, because a little early in the Mitsubishi Trane journey?
Let's see. Biggest thing I probably would have done differently in the first one was probably change partners a little faster. I was very late in changing partners, and because I was very nervous about changing partners, they already had created the system. They created problems, but they also at the same time at least knew where the problems were. So that ended up biting me at one point when I was a bit later to change than I probably should have been. That's probably the biggest thing I would have changed.
I love it. And it's so common, again, speaking to a lot of companies, sometimes they're like, this all makes sense. And again, we meet someone, they maybe have had a solution for 5 years and they're like, well, but we've already invested into this. We've spent XYZ. Like, it's so hard to just replacing something is like seen as the biggest fear. And, sometimes that's also something that holds you back for many more years ahead. So that's an interesting observation as well. And Joe, for you guys, I know at Comfort Systems, the IoT system is a little bit earlier. Pain points, build versus buy, advice, decisions, anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, so and I saw a few questions pop up, so I'll probably answer those in this quick foray. But first of all, chief cook and bottle washer, design, build the prototypes, and still building the items that we're deploying. But the thing is we actually hired a consulting agency to see if what we wanted actually existed, and it didn't. Now, again, we don't have access to the OEM boards and information. So, plus the vast majority, we've got over 300,000 assets under contract. The vast majority of those are more than 5 years old. And when I say vast majority, I'm talking in the high 80% range. So a lot of this is dumb equipment, so to speak. And so we had to have a solution that would apply to any piece of equipment. Didn't matter if it had a control system or a standalone. Didn't matter if it was out in the middle of a cornfield or in downtown Philadelphia. So from that standpoint, things like it's all cellular, it's chip-based, particle processor based. And so the whole point with that is we went to drive it down to the least possible cost so we could deploy them as an operational tool versus trying to monetize it as a sellable platform. So that's a big pivot for a lot of people. And then, we came to Blynk because we were starting to generate this data and said, now we've got to take and define how all these different manufacturers of equipment and sizes and tonnages all come together, and actually from a physics standpoint they're all the same but they're all different. And that became how we kind of came associated, as you had the ability to help us accomplish that. But it all starts with the data, and so we're deploying our own data capture devices. A couple companies have popped up that have sort of what we would have considered, but still not to the degree that we think it's robust enough for the type of service that we want to offer. So right now we're still in the build it ourselves. We may stay with that for the near future. That's where we're going to go. But if something pops up better, we'll buy it. But it's still always going to be an operational focus versus a monetary focus.
Yeah, makes sense. And while we're on hardware topic, I've been looking through the questions. I'm going to try to address some of them. Do most HVAC IoT devices for usage monitoring or refrigerant leakage detection use Zigbee devices and networking? Does retrofitting IoT devices pose any issues for technicians servicing systems that are aging 10 to 15 years old? I think it's more for Joe, and some of this has been already.
Yeah, so no, not really. Most of the devices out there are pretty simple, like the Zigbee device, and so they come with training, and technicians pick that up pretty quick. Even what we are doing, the technician's responsibility is to install it and activate it, but we're simplifying that process. And so what ends up happening is we get the device on and it starts collecting the data. All the magic happens in the background. And then when the technician goes out afterwards, the only thing they have to do is have the app so that they can say, here's the systems that look like they have an issue. Here's a description of what the potential issue is. We can give the technician, our goal is to give the technician anywhere from 2 days to 2 weeks notice so they can go out before the unit actually goes into a failure. And so from that aspect, the only training the technician has to do is how to use the app, solve the problem, which should be in their core wheelhouse, and then confirm that it's been solved after they apply the solution. So we're trying to keep it as simple and not have to go through a retraining of technicians, because we've got 2,700 technicians. It doesn't take you much to add the cost up of that.
Makes total sense. There's also a question of what has been the best advice to make sure IoT devices work in harsh HVAC environments? I don't know if you guys have deployments that you would consider harsh environments. Anyone want to address this one?
I can take a bit of that. So in the commercial space, we normally utilize Ethernet and landlines. So we don't have that much of that there. Wi-Fi is a bit tricky there because in the commercial space, you may not necessarily have a very good access to the Wi-Fi. Besides that, building management systems tend to rely on more landlines. So one of the things that we are looking at doing is moving into cellular, because in the HVAC life cycle, a lot of times you're installing equipment before you're installing the Ethernet at the location. Mm-hmm. So we are looking at moving towards cellular in the future in that case. If you're in the residential, the best way is to probably use a sub-gigahertz protocol. Z-Wave is one. Zigbee is 2.4 gigahertz and has about the same range as Bluetooth. And while you can often get those to work, it really does start to limit your distance. So if you can do a protocol that's below 1 gig between equipment, that tends to get you more distance, which is normally what you need when this equipment is located remotely in the house.
Yeah, makes sense. And just to follow up on this, something we've been seeing rise more and more is just hybrid connectivity deployments, where you build equipment that can work with different types of connectivity. And that's something that customers that do work with Blynk know that we have support for. So if you have Ethernet only type of deployments, use that. The ones that where Wi-Fi is available, fall back to that. If you want cellular, fall back to that. So increasingly we see OEMs not having to choose one, because there is, again, the variety of different conditions that the equipment's going to be activated in. So our increasing preference is for these hybrid connectivity models, and that's what we typically advise. A lot of questions. I don't know if we're going to be able to keep up with all of them. Some of that stuff we'll have to follow up. And I know there was a question about, has LoRa been considered? Have either of you guys worked with LoRaWAN or looked into it? Any comments on that quickly while we're on the engineering topic? I told you that was going to be the most meaty one. Based on the audience.
We looked into it. We stayed with cellular because it's built right on the microprocessor. And a couple of things that allows us to do is it actually allows us to triangulate exactly where it's at. And then we can use external things like NOAA information for temperature and humidity. And so it's simple. That's the thing, is you turn it on and it makes the phone call and it works. Getting on to some of the others, sometimes you have to have hubs and things like that, and it can get expensive. And trying to get on customers' Wi-Fi is just like almost impossible these days. So we looked at it. We'll continue to evaluate it, but right now the easy button for us was cellular right off the microprocessor, and it works.
Cool. All right. We've given a little bit of a glimpse of engineering talk. Everyone has much more to share. I think we're going to move over to other topics. Maybe if there are enough of good questions, we'll do some follow-ups in the future. But we talked about pains and complexities and challenges. I want to hear the good stuff. Again, each of you guys give me a real story from your career where you've seen real measurable effect of connectivity, like a problem solved, an unexpected insight about your product, improved service, whatever you've been able to see, measure, and clearly attribute to the fact that you've built a connected product versus the other. Mark, go for it.
Sure, I can take that. One of the situations I mentioned in the early on with Rinnai is that we had a connected solution, and it really was not easy to install. In fact, we were including it for free with our water heaters, and probably about 60-70% of them weren't getting installed. So when we looked at the new hardware solution, we needed to make sure that we created something that was easy to install, easy to work, and reliable. And based on that early situation, I had been asked by customer service to reach out in particular to this one contractor who was often very vocal, very profane sometimes about the issues that he was having. And so since he had my number now, after reaching out to him that first time, he started calling me anytime he had any problems, even if it wasn't with connectivity and all. And so after we had released the new solution, I'm driving home and see on the caller ID his name come up. And I think, oh, no, I might as well get this over with. I'm going to be blasted for something else that isn't working right for him. And he said, I've called and talked with you so much about issues that we've had. I just tried the new adapter, the new app, and was able to get it installed and working within 5 minutes, and just wanted to call and say that you guys actually fixed it. So that was probably one of the best days of being the connected solution bringer for that. But so that's, I think, the biggest thing is when everything works, and when you hear people say, it was just easy, or when you see units come up and you had no involvement whatsoever, which means it was so easy that they didn't even have to reach out to you. That's when connectivity really brings its value, I think.
That's amazing. Peachie, share some good stuff with us from your world.
Yeah, so I would say, one of the things that we had consistently struggle with is a lot of times our systems are installed in places where there is not a regional servicer, right? So your service team may be several hours away. So when you have sites that have repeated issues, things can become tense very quickly because your service providers are having to go far distances. So one of the situations we had early on, we had an application like that. And one of the things that sometimes doesn't become very apparent is that what people see is only the product in front of them, but it's part of a complete ecosystem, right? And so you could see a product failing, but it could be not the product and something else within the installation. It's very, very hard to diagnose. And this was one of those cases. It was product that had not been connected. So in this case, we did provide them with cell phone service in order to connect the product and then monitored it. And we were able to avoid some of the threats of litigation that start to come up when people get frustrated by not having hot water, understandably, because we were able to show what was happening within the system, show proof that it wasn't the product, but that there was something else within the system going on, but still help them to address that. You know, it's not hands off, but you're able to identify, well, this thing coming into the product is problematic. How do we help you address that so that the system can be stabilized? And at the same time, offer some suggestions on how to make the system run in a more advanced, in a more efficient way, and also schedule preventative maintenance and things like that. So that system has thus been connected ever since with their own connectivity that they brought in. But it really did help to avoid a situation where, and again, also illuminate the fact that a system is very complex and it may not always be the product, but your solution, your IoT solution, can help a customer troubleshoot their entire system and not just your product.
Yeah, remote diagnostics is everything. And we've heard a lot more stories from your team, Peachie, from Jorge and everyone, whose pandemic was completely new world where like, it was impossible to come and troubleshoot. So it was like a necessity.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And Joe, what's your best IoT story? You're on mute.
I'm muted because workers are outside. Ours is really around the overall ecosystem we kind of built going down this path. So first thing we did was build this, it's called the Fixed Support Center. It is a group of technicians that are there to support our technicians. And now with the platform, having information go to the technician that's going to get dispatched, plus going to my Fixed Support Center, allows us to make sure that they have the manuals, they have the troubleshooting guides, and everything is put out to the app. We have a support app that we built within the Fixed Support Center, and so they actually see all that information before they even get to the site. And so not only do they have an idea what the part or the component might be in failure, but also have the right manuals and information. So we built it into an overall ecosystem. And it is that entire system has been one thing that has allowed us in the last 6 months to secure some pretty large customers, because especially in the data center environment, that type of thing is critical and it's 24/7. So it gives us the ability to do that. So and we're just getting started with it. So there's a lot of runway on this entire platform. And so for people that are thinking about it, don't think about it, just go do it. You got to start sometime and get on it, or you're gonna miss.
No doubt, Joe. I'm looking at a time, we're a little bit over time. I do have one question for everyone here. What is next in connected HVAC? Where do you think which technology trend is gonna kind of make the biggest impact or difference in the next 12, 18 months? What would you bet on? Mark, let's start with you.
Sure, I think this will also answer some of the questions that are in the chat. The thing I'd say is next is preventative maintenance. It's one thing to be able to tell the contractors when there's an alert and what's gone wrong. It's another thing to say this unit will have an issue in the next 2 months. Go ahead and schedule an appointment. So we've been looking into solutions that will lead us that way.
Got it. Peachie.
So I absolutely agree. I think that the thing that we all want is the preventative maintenance part of it. Being able to tell somebody that their system is going to go down before it does is the real definition of guaranteeing uptime. And I think that to answer a question that I think came up in the chat as well, I think certainly AI will play a part in that, because it is so much data to evaluate in order to determine predictive maintenance criteria, I think there's no question that that data and using AI to evaluate it to determine what signals you should use for predictive maintenance reliably is going to be a big part of what happens in the coming months.
Great. And Joe, it's very aligned with what you guys are doing. So it sounds like everyone believes in the vision. Tell us about what your bets are for the future.
So our bets are also on the predicted maintenance, but also the predictive failure of basically our tagline for it is we want to be there before the customer knows they need us. And so from that aspect, not letting a machine go to failure just because of the compounding cost of a failure, but also the downtime the customer experiences. And so, again, I reference that we still sell the same maintenance contract we did, 40 years ago, and that is absolutely true. And so we have to change that. But, that's going to be change management for customers and owners as well. There's as many of them that are fearful of AI as they are embracing it. And so there's a lot of work to do from that aspect, and not to mention employees and everybody we're already working with. So some of this is going to be a long putt, but again, my boss mentioned in a meeting this week that, there's a lot of fear around people losing their jobs to AI, and I don't think people will lose their jobs to AI, but they will lose their jobs to people that use AI. And so when I say that, it's time to drop some of your concerns and start to embrace this because it's moving fast.
Agreed. And we talked about that a little bit in the preparation. While there is kind of the two camps where like AI is going to change everything, it's all AI. Then there's the camp of like, we'll wait 5-10 more years and like see where this leads. I think the right approach is somewhere in the middle. Like you don't need to change everything and like give up everything that you're doing because AI is going to come and blow everything up. Not really. But integrating AI into everything kind of one little step at a time is probably the right strategy. And that's kind of the more realistic approach that a lot of the companies that are solid businesses, they're not just about the hype, that had been running for years, are taking. And I think that's our Blynk view as well. Like you have to embrace this. There's like, it's not going back. It's not going to go anywhere, but it's also not going to change things overnight. So no extremes here, just slowly where it makes sense, solve individual pain points, like add a little bit of efficiency, not necessarily like all or nothing approach. That would be my few cents on this. And with that, we're almost 10 minutes over time. I promised you guys to finish on time, and we have a lot of questions that we didn't get to. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to take all of the questions and then circulate them with the speakers, get their input, and then publish additional maybe blog posts, or we'll figure out the right format, but we will address and give you guys more insights on some of the topics. Some of the topics are also very specific, like air quality management, maybe less in the wheelhouse of these folks, but we know now that this is a topic you guys care about, so we'll bring in other speakers or we'll source some feedback from the folks here in the room. But really loved the participation. This was excellent. And sorry we didn't get to all of the questions again. We'll plan more time next time. But for now, I just wanted to really, really thank you guys for candid answers, for sharing your experience, for opening up about, what's been easy, what's been hard, and what's coming. And yeah, just really delighted, had a great time chatting with you guys, Peachie, Joe, and Mark. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Everyone have a great day and be safe.
Likewise. Thanks, guys. Bye now.